Hello and welcome to the second beer review of tonight, which is June 27, 2016, which will probably give you an idea of how long it takes me to upload these things. You know, I just go and I always have like a backlog. You see them appear and it's probably like 2, 3, or even 4 months down the line from when I actually made them. Maybe someday I'll catch up, who knows. So, the second one I'm reviewing tonight, I'm a little bit excited for because it is Sam Adams' Got to Gose. Got to Gose. Sorry, I mispronounced it. Most Gose sort of beers are puns on the name. As many of you, well, the few of you who watch this quite often know, Gose is one of my favorite beer styles. Why? Because it's so radically different from other beers. You know, lactobacilli is used in creating it, which creates a sort of sourness and lacticness. Excuse me, lactic sourness. And, you know, instead of hops, salt and coriander is used. And in this beer in particular, also cucumber. So, from the summer pack, like the previous beer I reviewed, and again, very sessionable. That's going to be at 4.8 ABV. So, let's read the label, shall we? Gose, pronounced Gose, is a unique German-style beer known for a slight tartness and mineral character. We brewed our Gose with an unexpected combination of ingredients, including a pinch of salt, coriander, and spicy Saz noble hops. Okay, so there's hops in this one. To create a light and refreshing taste. Cheers. So, it says with cucumber added, but on here, but it doesn't say it up there. I am excited. Ooh. Let's go to the head first, since it's probably going to dissipate quickly. Got quite a funk there to it. Definitely has that, you know, that sour character of citrus sour. That weedy funkiness. And very much a smell of wet stone. Kind of muted, but Goses generally don't have a very, you know, big nose. Color is slightly darker than Goses I had before. Just a hair darker than bright yellow, as you can see here. Very well carbonated. Oopsie. What strikes me first is a very vegetal note in the finish. You got that coriander there, and you also got that cucumber doing a double whammy. So it's very vegetal. It's almost like the aftertaste of biting and chewing a cucumber. Salt definitely hits you up front. All throughout it, but especially in the mid to finish, is a sort of funkiness of the wheat malts. Now, one thing that this is kind of lacking, in my opinion, it's not very sour. And I mean that even in terms of like traditional Gose, it's not even very sour by that. It's not mouth-puckering sour, it's not even sort of subtle sourness. It's definitely there in the front and in the mids, but is underneath the other flavors. Which is not necessarily a bad thing in my opinion. What I find really interesting about this, comparing this to Otra Vez, which is Sierra Nevada's sort of nationwide Gose, is that this one is far more vegetal. You know, the coriander comes out a lot more, and you know, it comes off as much more vegetal, even though, you know, Otra Vez uses prickly pears in theirs, and this one is just using cucumbers, and cucumbers have, as you know, if you've ever bitten into a cucumber, a distinctive but very mild taste. Whereas prickly pears have a distinctive but somewhat in-your-face taste. And it's kind of interesting how much more oomphed up the cucumber taste in this one is. The malts are almost like wheat dough. It's almost doughy. In regards to the body, yes, the body's fairly light. It's a little bit heavier than other Goses I've had, though. And it's probably reflected also, too, by the slightly heavier ABV. Most of the other Goses I've had have been slightly lighter, 4.2 to 4.5. This is 4.8. Sourness is there. It's just, you kind of have to, it's so subtle, you just kind of have to drink it, and it's there making itself known. I'm kind of torn by this beer. Why am I torn by this beer? Well, one, it's, let me go to the positive side. It is really interesting. You know, there's kind of a lot going on there. Between the malts, between, you know, the traditional Gose ingredients, between the way Sam Adams has, and the Boston Beer Company and Jim Koch has interpreted the style. And, you know, there's a lot going on there, and I'm really enjoying it, and it's also a great summer session beer. On the bad side is, it's not really, you know, the lactic character, the sour lactic character is kind of, well, very muted. This is probably the least sour Gose I've ever had. The salt is also pretty subtle compared to most other Goses I've had. No. So, it's not really to style, but even though it's not to style, it's something that is really interesting on the palate. And if you brought this up to me as sort of a blind taste test, I wouldn't identify it as a Gose. I would be wondering what kind of sour style it is, you know, because it just seems so muted, that sourness. I would obviously notice that sort of lactic acids, mouthfeel, that citric kind of taste, you know, perceived taste to it. But I would also be wondering, wow, this is a lot thicker mouthfeel, the malts are much more apparent. What's this really, really strong vegetal note that's not like coriander? You know? But the thing is, interplay there is just so interesting that I have to actually kind of recommend this and say, well, it's not really what you're looking for in a Gose if you're looking for the traditional Leipziger style Gose, or, you know, the hyper-tart American interpretation of, well, hyper-tart, you know, craft beer sort of interpretation. This is sort of Sam Adams' take on it. And just as Otra Vez was Sierra Nevada exploring this style in a kind of direction, not moving too as far away from the style guidelines. This one is sort of an interpretation, moving quite a bit away from the style guidelines, but still having this really interesting interplay of flavors and feelings, and still very well crafted. So in the end, I'm going to have to recommend this. If you're looking for something that's like a German Gose that you've had before, or like an American style Gose, like Westbrook Gose that you've had before, it's not going to hit that. But it's going to hit the notes of what a kind of very subtle sourness and slightly more malt and flavor forward, malt and added flavor forward sort of Gose would be. And so, got to Gose. I really enjoyed this one. It's not to style, but even though it's not to style, in my opinion, it's going in some interesting directions. It kind of begs the question of what is to style with these recreations of beers that were nearly lost to history. But that's an entirely different discussion that I've kind of covered in other of my Gose reviews. And, I might even do like a full, kind of episode on, because, like I said, this is one of, California Common, aka Steam Beer, Gose is one of my favorite styles. And I might just do, an episode just sort of dedicated to talking about Gose. So, that's your beer review for tonight, folks. Cheers.